Good evening. My name is Captain Greg Shepard, and I am an Air Battle Manager at Tinker Air Force Base. When it comes to joint operations, there has been many times that in my career up to this point that I've participated in different functions. One in particular that I can think of is when I worked with the Top Gun School for Navy, which is the equivalent of the weapons school for the Air Force. I was a liaison officer for the E3 AWACS for an exercise that they were doing to prepare for deployment for one of their strike carrier groups. It was a pretty awesome experience to be able to work with the Navy and show them what the AWACS could bring to the fight, and also just see how they interacted with each other to get messages from each of the different ships within the air carrier strike group, and also how the airplanes communicated with the jets, and how the jets communicated, or airplanes communicated with the ships, and the ships communicated to the land, and how everybody was integrated in there, and just how the carrier strike group was just autonomous to itself, and how it didn't need any other resources to work. With that being said, going from some of the reading uh, that we've learned through this course so far, I've learned the importance of joint operations and how more important they're becoming, not just within the Air Force when it comes to different platforms such as air, cyber, space, and how we can integrate, but how we integrate with the other services. From previous readings, one of the main things that sticks out to me is the air mindedness that's been talked about in the past, and how the Air Force has to move away from just the mindset of having air power and having that air mindedness. So, what exactly does that mean? That means that we're no longer just focusing on air situations, and we're thinking more in the mindset of, okay, what can the Army bring to the fight? What can the Navy bring to the fight? What can the Marines bring to the fight? And building that overall officer that's able to work in that joint environment is going to be very imperative for the future. From the article Sustaining the New Norm of Jointness, I think one of the things that they talked about that really stuck out to me was how the different services are starting to incorporate the importance of that joint environment. One in particular, they talked about at the career level schools for the Army captains and Navy lieutenants at the O3 level. Each of these service has an opportunity to instill efficiency of the joint warfighting. And so it just talked about how these officers, O3s, will foster an understanding of joint warfighting necessary for success at this level. So just getting that into their minds as young officers is definitely going to help them implement it at a higher level. In SOS, which is what we're doing now, one of the stated purposes is to educate, motivate, and mentor captains as current and future Air Force leaders. But just like the armies, it mentioned how there is no mention of joint leaders. So now the school doing assignments like this, we're stepping out of our specialties and broadening our focus on essential leadership competencies and officership, leadership, problem solving, core values, and the Air Force as an institution. So one of the things the article talked about is just implementing more joint operations and joint focus, which is what this assignment here is doing. So when it came to that same article, it talked about the vision of a joint officer. So it said, from an institutional standpoint, the career level service schools should continue to teach doctrine and capabilities, but also demonstrate how these elements should nest within and complement joint doctrine and capabilities of the other services. So I thought that that was really good, just really emphasizing how we have to continue as a service to move towards those joint operations. So when it comes to the threats of our country and ways that we can prepare for that, I thought one of the important points that was brought up with national security had to do with space, right? So space doesn't have a geographical location per se. So that's one of the limb facts that we have today, is that there's no like rules out there right now currently to limit the space environment. And so the US is still growing and still learning how to use that. Another threat is cyberspace. So the problem with cyberspace is it's such a broad arena, and there's so many different types of people that are able to access the cyber world. And so I think it's such a growing field that other countries are going to try to exploit the US for our continuous growth in the cyber world. And so I thought that that was pretty interesting. Another threat that I saw was the inability for us to work in those joint environments successfully. Going back to a personal reference, I can think of red flags. So in red flags, what we do as the E3 is we work with not only fighters, but they bring in cyber, and they bring in space, and they bring in the Marines, and they bring in the Army, and they bring in the Navy, and all the different services work together to accomplish a mission based on whatever it is for that tasking, whether it's defense of, the Mediterranean Sea, or it's the defense of the U.S. Those are just one of the ways that we're working on those joint operations, and I think that it's only going to get better as time continues to go on. We're moving away from that traditional warfare and moving more towards how we can implement ourselves to become the strongest and the best, continue to be the strongest and the best military in the world. That's all that I had. Uh, Thank you for your time.